The new Coke. Does everybody remember this? Most people probably don't, but back in 1985, Coca-Cola did something absolutely unprecedented. They decided to get rid of their number one smash hit product for about 100 years, which was Coca-Cola, and replace it with something new. And that something new is the new Coke, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is a business case that has been discussed in business schools ever since, especially when dealing with marketing. Okay, now here's an article from Coca-Cola's own website, coca-colacompany.com, called "The Story of One of the Most Memorable Marketing Blunders Ever." Now, this story is actually a little bit controversial because there are a lot of conspiracy theorists that dispute the official party line and the official story on this. Now, Coca-Cola gives us the official party line, the official story, which was that this was a mistake, it was a blunder, and even though the net result was that Coca-Cola profited intensely from this, it was accidental. Okay, so first of all, people disagree on whether this was a success or a failure, and then people disagree on whether it was intentional or accidental. Now let's get into this. Okay, so what happened? Well, Coca-Cola replaced their product with a new product. Now, why did they do this? It was in response to something called the Pepsi Challenge. Pepsi, their main competitor, had a stroke of marketing genius where they found that most people in a blind taste test preferred the taste of Pepsi over Coke, and they used this in their marketing. Now, Coca-Cola was very alarmed by this because they replicated this and confirmed it to be true. They found that most people did prefer the taste of Pepsi over Coke, and they were horrified by this. So this was their answer. What they decided to do was come up with a new product called New Coke that supposedly, allegedly, would taste better than both the original Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Okay, now supposedly, allegedly, they did this, and they created a formula for a new drink. They tested it internally. They apparently did a lot of blind taste tests with potential customers, and they concluded that this stuff was better than the original Coke and Pepsi. And there was supposedly a mountain of data to prove this, and they touted this in their marketing line, their promotional materials for the new Coke. Okay, now we come to our first discrepancy because although Coca-Cola maintains that this was well researched, when they introduced New Coke, the reaction was the complete opposite. Everybody apparently hated the taste of the new drink. They found it very inferior to original Coca-Cola, and they didn't even prefer it over Pepsi either. So, the first question that nobody seems to have a great answer for was, how could Coca-Cola's internal research be so inaccurate? If they legitimately believed that this drink was better than the original Coca-Cola, how could they have been that wrong? With all that money and all that talent at their disposal, I haven't seen a great explanation for why that is. Now, there is a really good video on YouTube that talks about this and how new documents have come to light recently that demonstrate that Coca-Cola wasn't actually that stupid. They realized that they did not have a winner on their hands in the form of this new Coke, and that internally their data showed that people didn't in fact like this new drink over the original, but those results were hushed up because they contradicted what the company wanted to do. Okay, that's a very good video. I'm going to put a link to it in the description, and I encourage you to check that out because that seems to be a missing piece of the puzzle in this business case that's been open for 30 plus years. Now, so the first part of it was whether it's a success or a failure. Now, it turns out that although New Coke was a colossal failure, as soon as they introduced it, pretty much immediately, people decided, the consensus was that this was a bad product. It was not superior to the original. And Coke had decided to introduce this and eliminate their number one bestseller, the original Coke. They didn't introduce this drink side by side with their original bestseller. They replaced their original bestseller with this. Now, a lot of people have discussed why that is. The accepted explanation is that Coke did not want this new drink to cannibalize the sales of their old drink and thus paved the way for Pepsi to be the actual number one drink in the United States of America when it came to fizzy drinks. So that has been explained. That was the reasoning behind it, and it has a certain logic to it. Okay, but what ended up happening was that because the public hated this new drink, it prompted an outcry that Coca-Cola should bring back the original drink, the original Coca-Cola. And this they did less than 3 months later in the form of Coca-Cola Classic. Now, when that occurred, the sales of Coca-Cola Classic went right through the roof. And this was supposedly because people were so happy that the original drink was back. Okay? Now, does that make New Coke a success or a failure? Well, on the surface of it, it was a failure, but the end result was that it was a fabulous success for the Coca-Cola company. If you define success as your sales, revenues, and profits all going up tremendously, while simultaneously your branding being further entrenched in the public mind, well, that's the net effect of New Coke. That's what it did for the company. So it wasn't a failure. It was, in fact, a success. But a lot of people disagree on this. Now, the second thing that people disagree on is whether this was intentional or accidental. Okay, because like I said, it's kind of hard for most people to believe that Coca-Cola was that stupid in that they introduced a drink that they believed everyone would love. They would love it better than Pepsi. They would love it better than their original drink. But yet, everyone hated it. They hated it worse than the original Coca-Cola. They hated it worse than Pepsi. It was very embarrassing. And there was such a public outcry by the fact that this stuff had replaced their beloved Coca-Cola, even though most people preferred Pepsi than Coke, that it was the pressure was such that less than 3 months later they did a complete about face and reversed the decision. So people have a hard time figuring that. Now, like I said, there has been some recent information. There is an excellent YouTube video I'll put a link to that indicates that documents have been discovered that indicate that internally at Coca-Cola, they knew that this new drink wasn't a hit. They knew that people didn't prefer it over Pepsi or the original product, and they quietly hushed up that information because it contradicted with what they were planning to do. Okay, so that would tend to indicate that they were fully aware of what they were doing and that this was intentional. Okay, now I'm not a conspiracy theorist. That's not what Coca-Cola says. That's not what a lot of people in authority positions at business schools have said. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. But I do think it's strange how we haven't heard more details of how Coca-Cola could make such a fundamental blunder. Was their corporate culture so bad as to allow this kind of misinformation being propagated and true statistical data on taste tests being suppressed in the favor of their marketing plan? So that's a very interesting question. I'm not sure if we'll ever get to the bottom of this. It's been many decades already, and people are still discussing this because I guess at the end of the day, it's just too much to swallow to believe that a company with this much money and this much resources and this much expertise in this particular industry could make such a colossal, fundamental mistake. Thank you very much for listening. You guys are awesome, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.